Well, hello and welcome back to another round of CVR's 1923 Golden Era Championship. This time in race number 7, back in France at Miramar, and we'll be at the Autodrome today that you're seeing on your screens right now. Of course, this is a oval circuit, concrete, instead of tarmac or gravel, and effectively it's going to be a relatively high-speed circuit with two large chicane-style corners. We're of course back after our last round in Spain, and I'll go through a little bit about the information which has happened in between the two rounds. But of course we started this championship in 1923. We have moved forward in time now to 1926. So few different vehicles on show today. Drivers, of course, in this championship have the ability to switch between different cars, and I'll talk through a little bit about which drivers are driving what today, so you're fully up to speed with what's going on. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just bring up the season standings for the race today. So there you go. You can see that after 6 rounds, we've got Heitinen up in first place, Nurmi in P2, Marcus Peltonen in P3, and Tollenin, who's the organiser of this championship, in 4th place. Therefore you can see the remainder of the drivers in their various situations all the way down to P33. And looking forward to today's race, we can see the starting grid for today's race is as follows. So Lippi, Nurmi and Von Rosen have done very well with the 1, 2, 3 starting position, but the drivers who've done quite poorly are Tollenin, Heitinen as well. They are quite far down at the rear of the pack. Marcus Peltonen down there as well, and that is just a consequence of the way that the draw works for picking starting positions. So some work to do for some of the drivers, but the likes of Nurmi, who did very well last round, looks to be in a pretty good spot for this one. So definitely one to watch for today's race going into this one. So I'll just bring up the standings again, so you've got a bit more time to absorb that while I talk through a little bit about what's happening with the race today. So it's a concrete track, as I mentioned earlier on. Drivers will most likely be using the smooth tyres as they have the best grip. However, they do have the fastest grip degradation, so it's not entirely clear whether they'll be able to manage all 50 laps today in the race without having to change. And then for the 1926 season, the Delage has had its power reduced by 30 horsepower to generate additional torque, but the fuel consumption is a lot higher, so probably going to see a bit of fuel strategy coming into that, and hopefully that doesn't come up as an issue with anyone driving the Delage going into this race. It will be kind of curious to see whether they can do the whole race without refueling. So the 25 Delage might actually be slightly advantaged here over the 26 version. The Talbot is the fastest on the straights, which is going to be pretty important for this track, but has very bad brakes, which means that actually coming down to those 2 chicanes might actually be the undoing of that particular choice, despite it having the high top speed. And then other cars will unfortunately require a bit of good luck to help them get across the line in a strong position. Every other car is pretty much going to be disadvantaged in terms of speed and it's, how well it's suited to this particular track. The Amel car being a particularly poor contender on that basis because it has only 83 horsepower, which is almost half of what the Delage has. So, going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. Now, so we just wait a little bit more time for the race to get going. I'll just bring the starting grid back up. So, cooling shouldn't be an issue for the cars this round. We've seen that in previous rounds where cars have actually literally had to stop for a period of time mid-race and let the engine cool down. And that's just been there to, tracks where you don't have as good cooling potential. It can lead to issues with the overheating on the engine. The weather is sunny as in Spain, so shouldn't be any rain forecast for today. And west wind is though notable, so could be a little bit of that coming into play, but again shouldn't be too much of an issue. And the start is a regular standing start. The ballot was really fortunate to Nurmi, as I mentioned earlier on, but unfortunate to Heitinen, Henry and Tollenin out of the top 5 contenders for the championship. In terms of drivers to keep an eye on today, the 26 Delages are probably the fastest cars today, but the 25 Delages, as I mentioned, and the Talbots are not far behind, so we could see a little bit of interaction between those two. I expect a tight battle between those. The 25 Delages are the most powerful car here today, but the 26s have better torque. The Talbots have probably the fastest top speed on the straights, but as I mentioned, their brakes will be bad, so that might actually be they may start to fade towards the end of the race, which could be interesting with those chicanes. There are 10 of those cars, or 3 types of car on the grid. There's quite tight battles expected between those groups. Everything else might be a little bit of a struggle, and Silverstone and Lemur have both the latest Bugatti, so they can do pretty good in those. The challenges will be Peltonen, Uatila, and maybe Kusler and Heitinen. But they also have to fight their way from the back of the grid, which is quite a wide track, so it shouldn't be too difficult for that to happen. But one big question will be whether how Tollenan can fight his way back from that far back. So, just getting ready for the race start now. And off they go. Ah, my car was in the way, unfortunately, there. I got myself, just to make sure I'm back in the pits. Yes, I am. Actually, no, I don't think it was me. It wasn't me. That was good. Let's get back to the action then. So, Nurmi leads the pack into the first of the chicanes. Further back, we can see the rest of the cars coming through. A little bit of a close encounter there with number 14, which is Kusler, getting turned around, and actually a lot of the other cars getting caught up in this action early on in the race, which might lead to early race damage for a few of the cars. Kusler in particular getting turned around as the rest of the pack tried to work their way around. But they seem to be back under power, and that's good news. Tollenan doing quite well on the start there, up to P11, which is a good opening bit of action just coming through the first chicane, going pretty wide now through the first of the major first corners. And looks like Uatila doing pretty well here as well. P6 with Lippi and Lafrege just behind. Further back we've got Henry, Darling, Kusler and Lubomirsky, which are in close formation, having probably been involved in that little bit of an accident in the first of the chicanes. But you can see, as I mentioned earlier on, it's quite a wide track here, so lots of opportunity for some clean overtaking. And that should make things a little bit more straightforward for the faster cars to make up those positions. But as we come down to the second of the chicanes, you can see that the cars are starting to group up, and there is a risk, of course, in these chicanes, especially in the early stages of the race, where there might be a bit of a risk of contact as the cars of different braking capacities, try and slow down for the same corner, coming down from what is effectively top speed. There we go. Let's go back to Heitinen, who's up to P8 already. He's got Lafrege just behind as they battle with Lippi. And just take you through who's driving what. So Heitinen is in the Talbot for this race. Lippi in the Bugatti. So is Lafrege for the Bugatti as well. The Bugattis actually do seem to be holding up pretty well so far. And back into that first chicane. A little bit easier now with a bit more breathing room between the cars, but again you can see actually how the cars will compress as they go into the chicanes, and that will lead to a little bit more close action. The remainder of the track is relatively easy going though, as you have plenty of space to operate in, and it's pretty much put to the floor with gentle cornering. So Nurmi, as expected, is out in first place with a 3-second gap to Peltonen. Silverstone in P3 with Paul van Rosen in P5 now, just being overtaken by Uatila. And Uatila leaving a bit of a smoke stream behind him there. James Lemur now overtaking Paul van Rosen into P5 and taking advantage of that top speed as they come up to the second of the chicanes. So Uatilla is in the 1926 Delage, which, as we noted, does have a bit of an issue with the brakes. But it's Heitinen who's in the Talbot, and we'll have to see how he compares with the other 1926 Delages, which are ahead. It's actually the 1925 Delage for Nurmi and Peltonen, who are in P1 and 2. And as the briefing mentioned, they are doing pretty well so far. So on to lap 3, and at the moment the grid is still relatively close in parts. Starting to form pockets for sure. We've got Heitinen in close proximity to J. Muir. Let's see actually from Heitinen's point of view how the braking down into the first chicane goes. Him coming through here in close proximity to J. Muir, who actually we're going to take a little bit of a moment to go and enjoy the livery that the number 33 car J. Muir has applied, the Texaco livery. Bit of a flame job on the front, so very nice work there. But you can see just how evenly matched J. Muir is in the 1926 Delage with the Talbot. They are a pretty close run affair, and that should be interesting in terms of battles as these two continue. Looks like Heitinen taking an opportunity to go around the outside. Has to go slightly the longer way around because J. Muir is hugging that inside line, but looks like the Talbot has got the legs, as predicted, to stretch them on the straight here, and that's going to make things a little bit more of a challenge for the likes of J. Muir. Up ahead you can see Kai Sivertsen and Uatilla. So looks like Lemur struggling there with keeping up with the Talbot. They've opened up a 2.3 second gap, or 2.1 second gap between Heitinen and J. Lemur. Let's go back to Kayla Fredge and Kusler, who seem to have been involved in a little bit of an incident in the second chicane, and you can see now Crozet attempting to find a way around as Tolonen just appears out of nowhere, I think that was, and yeah, Tolanen's been involved in an incident in the chicane, and Crozet trying to find an opportunity to get the car turned around here, but they're in a very awkward spot with the fact that they have to wait quite a long time, and they've got another set of cars coming along now, so they might just have to stay here until such time as it's safe to pass. So they've taken the moment, taken the opportunity there to make the move, and they're back under power, underway, having lost quite a few positions there on the back of that. So Bernard now in the number 2 car is actually taking advantage of this little bit of an incident and slipstreaming a little bit to as much as they can off Crozet, but just checking, Crozet's driving the 1926 Delage and Renard is in the Alfa Romeo 1925, so you can see already that the speed differential between these is quite impressive. Looks like Tolnin's taking it into the pits as a result of that. I don't know if they've picked up damage, but they've come in for hopefully what is a short stop to get some repairs done. Hopefully that isn't the end of their race. But definitely losing out a few positions there, which is going to be interesting for the championship fight. And here we have Heitinen now 0.7 of a second behind Kai Sivertsen, so Heitinen in with an opportunity here to catch up with some of the 1926 Delages, which Kai Sivertsen and Uatilla are both driving. Meanwhile, Nurmi and Peltonen storming off with their 6-second lead. So 50 laps of racing today. We've got 4 laps completed so far, or underway. And with about a 2-minute lap time, this should be about a 100-minute race. Heitinen taking the opportunity there to throw it down the inside as they overtake Kai Sivertsen in the Delage. So the Talbot's definitely a strong contender for this track. We'll have to see how those brakes survive. You can see actually Kai Sivertsen able to come back somewhat relatively well on the back of the braking zone, as the 1926 Delage does seem to have the advantage there. The chicane's acting as a quite nice leveller between the cars, because it just stops this from being a full-on pedal to the metal drag race. Kussler's in the pits, as is Lafrege. So interesting that they've both decided to come in at the same time. They are in the Bugattis. I'm not sure why they've decided to come in. Looks like it actually might just be... I was going to say it might have been a drive-through, but actually they seem to have carried on, and it looks like Lafrege and Kussler are doing donuts now. But let's go back to the action. Let's go back to Heitinen, because he has got Kai Sivertsen still 1.2 seconds behind. Let's also take a look at Henry in P11, the number 12 car, taking an opportunity here to try and make a move on Mejde, and Emperera closed in behind in the number 58 car as well. Henry is, of course, in the Sunbeam, which he's been driving for some time in the league now, from the 1924 version. And Mejde is in the 1926 Bugatti, as is Pereira. And they're now going side by side, with Henry just getting a little bit under pressure now, getting overtaken by two cars as they head down to the chicane. But Henry's in the defensive position here, ready to take the inside of the first corner. That might leave Mejde and Pereira on the inside for the left-hander, setting up for the strong exit there. Looks like Lippi as well getting in on the action here. Lippi in the Bugatti as well, so Henry is surrounded by Bugattis right now. And here comes Lippi now, 0.5 of a second behind Henry, but gaining, and has the inside track as well, which will help a little bit with overtaking potential. Onboard view here with Lippi as they track the inside line. And Lippi's moved up to P12 as Mejde and Pereira continue to battle. Let's see whether Henry has any opportunity here on the run down to the first chicane. Again, Henry just dropping back a little bit too far now, I think, to be in contention. But you can see the mistake there from Pereira in the Bugatti just ahead, kicking up a bit of dust as they went off the track. And that's allowed Mejde and Lippi just to get a little bit closer, but still a second behind. And unfortunately, it looks like Tolonen has retired from the race after the incident into the chicane. They haven't left the pits yet. Mejde now starting to get a little bit closer behind Pereira as the battle intensifies. Let's take a look here from the other external cameras that we have. Pereira leads the group down into the braking zone for the second chicane. You can see the speed comes right down to sub 60 kilometers an hour, even hitting the 30s there. And then it's right back on the power, so certainly going to be a bit of a workout for the brakes during this race. Tolonen has just advised me through direct message that his race was over pretty fast. He's tried to avoid hitting Kussler into the chicane and then hit a road sign and consequently that broke the radiator and the brakes, and then so Wall, while trying to get out the pits for repairs, ended up upside down, so not good news for Tollenin there. Lippi, on the other hand, has just managed to sneak past Megster and moves up to P11. And further back we've got Crozet in the number 6 car, actually in P13, just overtaking Henry as well to move up one position to P13. Looks like Paul van Rosen is suffering a little bit at the back of the grid here, 52 seconds behind now, and at risk of being lapped potentially in the number 4 car. Maybe they're suffering from a little bit of damage. They might have been caught up in that initial incident, which caught a few drivers out in the first chicane. You can actually see Paul van Rosen here definitely suffering from some kind of technical issue, as he gets easily overtaken by Megster just coming past there. Now Crozet overtakes Megster into P12. That leaves Megster down in P13 now. Moving up to P8 now, we've got the number 10 by Withoft and Darling in the number 66. Looking for a little bit of an angle here. Seems to be getting the straight line speed advantage here, and Darling going around the outside now in the Alfa Romeo 1925. Actually, they're both the Alfa Romeo 1925. So they're neck to neck now, as Darling just manages to take it down on the inside and sneak through. Of course, having to go slightly less distance by being on the inside line. But they are trading positions, and it's absolutely neck and neck as they come down the start-finish straight. And it looks like it's going to be whoever gets the inside line for the first chicane, which is going to be Darling at this rate. Here they go. Looks like Darling's done well to stay in the action there, but it's Withoft who moves up to P8 and leads away. Darling in the slipstream though, and actually gaining. So seems to be coming out of that chicane with a bit more of speed. That's going to give Darling an opportunity again to try and push around the outside. And giving him plenty of room as to avoid any incidents, and it's absolutely neck and neck with these two as they carry on. .1 of a second in favour of the number 10 car. And as they come down to the braking zone for the second chicane, it's the number 10 leading in with a 1 second advantage. See if they can hold that on the way out. Number 66 car there with its pink livery and blue wheels, quite distinctive. Darling does seem to get out of the chicane with a good burst of speed, but it's on the straights where they seem to struggle. But maybe they have even they have the same car, maybe a slightly different setup. But Darling now 0.2 of a second behind, looking for an opportunity to close. But again, has to go around the outside, and that's going to make things a little bit more challenging for them as they attempt to overtake. Get absolutely neck and neck as these two come along. Let's see what they do into the braking zone again, because that's where Darling seems to lose out typically. And again, happens as before. Darling later on the, or earlier on the brake, sorry, slows down a lot earlier on, but seems to be prioritising a strong exit from the chicane. Meanwhile, the number 10 seems to be getting through there with a lot more aggressive braking. Now Darling finds themselves about 1.5 seconds behind, so might struggle to gain on that one. Let's go back to Lippi and Crozet, who are battling with Pereira through the first chicane. And it's Lippi who comes out on top with Crozet and Pereira trailing behind. Pereira 0.2 of a second behind Crozet, and Crozet 0.3 behind Lippi. Driving now in a little bit of a formation. Of course, Crozet in the Delage and Lippi and Pereira in the Bugattis. All the 1926 editions. Pereira looking for a bit of an angle down the inside, manages to sneak through as they get the run on Lippi. But as they come up to the braking zone, let's see who fares better. Crozet's done well actually to work their way back up to P10. And it's Pereira who is in P11 here, trailing just behind Crozet. I think they are losing out a little bit of time, but it's Lippi in the other Bugatti who is 0.5 of a second behind Pereira and closing slightly, getting that slipstream advantage, not having to work as hard to work their way through the air. Let's take a moment to check out our race leader Nurmi, who is still 7 seconds clear of Peltonen, driving the 1925 Delage. And just coming up to the first chicane where they're overtaking one of the back markers. So the lapping has begun. I believe that will be Paul van Rosen. Nope, it isn't. I stand corrected. Oh, it's Medjder. Meanwhile, Peltonen coming through in P2. Let's go to Kai Sivertsen and Jay Lemure, who are in P5 and 6 respectively. And it's Lemure now 0.4 of a second behind Sivertsen as they burn down the start-finish straight here, looking for an overtake opportunity. But Lemure has got 0.2 of a second or 0.3 of a second to close before that's going to happen. They're in the Delage 1926 respectively, so no clear advantage between the two cars. Just be down to driver skill and who's willing to take the biggest risks. Meanwhile, back in P19 we've got Trumpke and Lubomyrsky battling toe to toe. But it looks like Trumpke is in the Lausanne, isn't it? Which is going to be quite disadvantaged at this track, I would believe. And you can see Lubomyrsky is burnt through there without too much of a trouble. Lubomyrsky is in the 1924 Alpha, so clear advantage there, but it looks like they just made contact a little bit with the rear of one of the other cars. Hopefully that hasn't induced too much damage. Let's take a look at the... ooh! Just saw what looks like Kai Sivertsen going a little bit whiff there on the exit from the chicane. You can see Jay Lemure taking advantage of that mistake and eases on through to P5, leaving Kai Sivertsen a bit disadvantaged in P6 now. And you can see the gap widening between these two as the acceleration is in favour of Jay Lemure at the moment. This goes to show you what big an impact a small mistake like that can have on a track where you've got a long straight or top speed section following a tight corner like that. But I was just going to go back and have a quick look at Lazaro, who is running in P7. A new livery for their car this round, which is the 1925 Delage. But as we go back to Jaylee Moore and Kai Siversen, you can see that they are still battling. 0.7 of a second separating these two, but Kai Siversen not willing to throw in the towel just yet. Meanwhile, we have the likes of Henry under pressure again from the number 2 car, Renaud, as they come into the chicane. Looks like Henry just losing out a little bit there and hits the brakes just to make sure they don't have an accident. Henry's in the 1924 Sunbeam, sorry, and Renaud in the 1925 Alfa Romeo P2. Now a mixture of cars under blue flags conditions. We've also got Crozet and Kusler heading down to the first chicane. And Kusler, who we saw having that issue in the first chicane at the beginning of the race, manages to sneak a couple of overtakes there, as they manage to get past Crozet and Darling and move up to a steady P9. Here we have though Kai Siversen taking the opportunity to make a move on Lemur as they come round on the inside track, and that will make it a little bit easier for Siversen to get through, but they've got some traffic ahead in the shape of I can't quite see the car number. But Siversen is through, and Lemur drops down to P6 with a 0.2 second gap. But the first chicane is coming, and you can see the cars darting out into position as Lemur looks for a way past. Decides to cut back in on the inside. And we might get a good view of the car number in front. Actually, that might be Haley Smith. Yes, it is. So Haley Smith running 17th, sorry. Now under pressure from the P5 and P6 drivers as they look to overtake and lap. There's the overtake from Siversen onto Haley Smith. It's actually Jay Lemur who's struggling now. Haley Smith actually back in front again. Getting a bit of wheel spin there on the midway through the chicane. That would have been a bit of a heart-in-mouth moment for Kai Siversen. So the Talbot, driven by Heitinen, doing well up there in P4. Take a little bit of a moment to go back down to P15 here, where we've got Henry and Majda battling away into the first chicane. Majda with an opportunity here to get past in the 1926 Bugatti. Shouldn't be too challenging given Henry's in the 1924 Sunbeam Grand Prix. But they seem to be giving Majda a bit of a run for their money. Going back down to P8 here, we can see Kusler overtaking the number 10 car without too much difficulty. Looks like there might be a bit of an issue for Withoft in the number 10. They're certainly not driving as quickly as I know that car can go. But it's Medster and Henry who are going toe to toe. It looks like Medster's made the move, but Henry's coming back strong. And as they come down to the next chicane, it looks like Henry's going to have a little bit of traffic ahead to deal with. There's a V6 Vossan going through. Or Vossan C6, I think it is. And it looks like Medster and Henry are working their way through. That's Paul van Rosen in the number 4 car, back in P22 that they've just overtaken. And there they go, overtaking the Vossan. These two are going absolutely toe to toe, running down to the first chicane now, and it's Medster who leads with Henry just behind. Again, Henry doing well in the chicanes to catch up. But will this be too big of a gap to fill, as looks like Medster has gone through with quite a significant lead now. 2 seconds behind, but it looks like Henry's done well on the acceleration again and actually manages to catch up. But still 0.6, 0.8 behind. That being said, they seem to be still in contention here, 0.6. The gap getting smaller or larger, getting slightly larger. So maybe Medster's managed to open up a big enough gap now that they can start to relax a little bit. Henry at risk of falling out of slipstream now, which will definitely impede their ability to make progress. Let's take a look at Uatilla though in the number 38 car. P3 currently, Heitinen in the Talbot just behind, and that gap's getting smaller I believe. Last lap times for both drivers respectively. Uatilla was on a 2:05.97, Heitinen on a 2:06.380. Actually, Uatilla does seem to be putting in a slightly faster lap time than Heitinen, but Heitinen looking to capitalise on any small mistake that might be going to be delivered in front of them. And you can see now they're working their way through traffic. As the Talbot heads up to the first chicane. Having to avoid a car ahead there as they come down. Getting squeezed for space now. But Heitinen has done well to get through there I think. And they'll be keen to take advantage of all this traffic, slowing down their main competition, which is Uatilla. Here we have Crozet and the number 10 car, Withoft, with what looks like a nice little overtake going the way of the number 6 car driven by Crozet. But it isn't a slam dunk just yet. Looks like the number 10 car's got the inside track for the first corner into the second chicane. And Crozet's still in P10, waiting for an opportunity here. But it's Uatilla and Heitinen that we have to go back and check on. They're just going to the chicane, and Heitinen has managed to just pip Uatilla to the post there. But on the acceleration, looks like Heitinen has got a little bit of a disadvantage here. It's side by side with Uatilla. Uatilla actually now a car length ahead almost. Let's see what these guys can deliver on the run down to the next chicane, because the Talbot is faster and we might see Heitinen start to slingshot pass as they come past Paul van Rosen. Talbot just easing alongside now with that slightly higher top speed. That's the Heitinen special. And it's Heitinen leading these two down the start-finish straight, heading down to the first chicane. But the brakes that Uatilla has might be slightly more advantageous here. Let's see what happens. And it's Heitinen who comes out still on top. Gets a better escape from the first chicane this time, and that leaves Uatilla 0.6 of a second behind. And that gap is closing, 0.5. Slightly better acceleration for Uatilla in the 26 Delage. But Crozet and Wittoft are going at it still. 0.1 of a second separating these two as they just go too wide there. Oh, sorry, 3 wide. And it actually looks like Peltonen or Nurmi that they're Tango. That's Peltonen. Will there be any risk of contact for Peltonen as they work their way through these two? So far so good, and it's Crozet who comes out with a strong lead there over Wittoft. 1.6 seconds on the back of that one chicane. Haley Smith down in P15, now setting up for a little bit of a tango with Henry. Henry seems to be getting involved in all sorts of action on the track today. Henry seems to be falling a little bit further back, and Haley Smith might be in safe spot pretty much now. Just going to take a look at Lippi though in number 22 in P12. They're still battling with Emperor actually. They've been going toe to toe now for the last few laps, and they've been doing so in the same car. So very even match up between these two. Lippi continuing here, closing in on Darling now as 0.4 seconds behind. Emperor 1.2 seconds behind time, but it looks like Darling is at risk of being a bit of a battle with Lippi. Quite. That's just a visual effect of the track, but that section, it up a lot of dust and smoke. Not a bug or spots, but that's not how that's on the. Darling, Pereira, and Lippi trading places now. Pereira gets past Lippi on the braking zone of the second chicane. While Nurmi still out in front with a 20-second lead now. Peltonen, 16 seconds ahead of Pete. Look at this, Lippi is coming back strong, over a second down behind Pereira. Perhaps getting a little bit smaller. The gap though between Bailey Muir and Uatilla, it's a whole minute separating those Out in the pits. Fake. Lippy. Okay, it looks like Orban Rosen definitely kind of technical issue there. Their car's crawling along. Bits of smoke coming out. Lippy now 0.3 of a second behind Pereira. Closing in. See what they do. Lippy now 0.4, 0.5 almost. Pereira still in P12 with the number 58 car. It's Darling though in front who is still holding on to P11, but we'll see whether Pereira or Lippy can do anything about this. There we have it. Pereira manages to make it through, just pipping Darling to the post. Lippy now has to get past Darling as well. Meanwhile, Pereira has the opportunity here to open up a bit of a gap. And Pereira's up to P11, just scraping the bottom of the top 10. Time it's Lippy looking for a little bit of an opportunity here to get past Darling. Pushing hard. And they're just overtaking La there. And La is driving the Amel car, which is the one with 85 horsepower, so definitely struggling there for power. Meanwhile, Pereira opens up a 1 second gap to Darling. Ooh, but mistake for Pereira. And they've spun themselves around. Darling manages to get through, as does Lippy. And Pereira has to wait now for the Amel car to get past. And here they go, making their opportunity to get back underway. That's undone a lot of work for Pereira, unfortunately. They're now 11 seconds behind Lippy. Meanwhile, Darling can take a little bit of a sigh of relief. They've now got Lippy and Pereira both firmly behind them. 2 seconds for Lippy, 11.7 for Pereira. So definitely came out a positive outcome there for Darling. But Lippy is starting to get closer into the braking zone. The things tightening up a bit. Pereira in the pits, so probably sorting out a bit of damage there. That allows Haley Smith to get through to P13. Henry will be next up to get past. And there we go, 22 laps of the 50 laps now almost completed. And as we approach half race distance, we have a pretty spread out grid. Now might be a good time just to take you through what's happened in between the last two rounds. So, following drivers didn't get a finishing prize at Sitges, which was the last round. Grosjean, 15,000 credits for repair fees. Sorry, I've just got these are the wrong way around. The following drivers didn't get a prize. That was Emperera for a DNF, and then the following drivers had to pay repair fees, which was Grosjean, 15,000 credits for 3 crashes over 50 kilometers an hour. Nurmi picked up a singular 100 kilometer an hour or over crash, which was a 10,000 credits repair bill. And then T. Kusler for 50 kilometer an hour incident picked up a repair bill of 5,000 credits. So not too big actually a list there actually. Normally that's a bigger list of repair bills to go through. So not too consequential there. Van Rosen definitely suffering in this race. He's 4 laps down now. Here we can see Darling overtaking the Laboratoire. Again, puff of the smoke and the dust there, that could just be a track issue to be honest. Meanwhile, Lazaro in P6 has been having a relatively straightforward race. In the number 13 car here, they've just been pretty much happy sitting in this little gap between P5 and 7. Not too much action, but they are starting to get a little bit closer to, I think that's Haley Smith. And with an opportunity to try and overtake a back marker there. Here we have Henry once again. Still 1.8 seconds ahead of Medster. They were a lot closer previously on, but it seems like Henry's managed to open up a pretty commanding gap now. This is Lubomirski in the Alpha, number 6, down in P19. Like Darling starting to edge a little bit closer behind Lippi now as they get that gap down to 0.5 of a second, just scraping onto the 0.4s. And in the background you can see Jay Lemur, who blasts on through on the inside on the run down to the second chicane here. Let's see whether Lippi's seen them. The braking zone they go. For a risk here for Lemur, they might get contact, and there it is. That's easily enough to cause a flat tyre. Looks like Lippi's come out okay. No flats for Lemur either, but that might have done some damage. We'll have to see. One of those moments where it might be worth just taking your time and waiting for the best time to pass. Looks like El Renard in the number 2 car has just overtaken Mejda, and they head down into the second chicane there with quite a bit of gusto. Managed to get past Henry as well in that braking zone. Henry's not out yet though, but there's the Amel car getting out of the way as the faster cars come through, and it's Mejda, Henry and Renard now in a 3-0 battle for P14. Breaking down into the first chicane here. Henry, again, quite well on the brakes there, manages to sneak past Mejda once more as they go through side by side now, and Sunbeam getting quite good acceleration there as Henry manages to ease on through, but it's Mejda now coming back strong in the Bugatti. Not quite past yet, but getting close. Going toe to toe. From Henry's point of view, you can see that big smoke pile that I was mentioning before, but there you can see Mejda working their way past. Henry drops into the slipstream, but is getting ready for the braking zone. You can see just how far out they're having to brake for these. Henry obviously doing much better on the brakes there than Mejda does. But again, as they come through, it's going to be the acceleration. That's going to be interesting. And there's Heitman in the number 14 car, the Talbot, overtaking both drivers as they come through into their third place spot. Meanwhile, Darling and Lippi continuing to go hammer and tong here. There's Alazaro just getting caught out with Lippi again, and no, Alazaro just gets back onto their wheels. Will they be able to get the car started again? The Feather of Hermes. Gets underway again. Lippi as well. That's the second accident for Lippi this race. That's bad news for Lippi. And Alazaro was having such an uneventful, straightforward race here, and that's resulted in a crash. Just put them down to P7. And I imagine they'll be taking a trip to the pits next. There'll be a few repair bills coming out of this race, that's for sure. Here comes one of our race leaders. That looks like Peltonen. Going to stay with Lazzaro and see if Lazzaro's heading to the pits. I suspect they will be. Lippi, I wouldn't be surprised as well, will need to take a little trip to the pit lane as well. It momentarily showed Peltonen disconnecting and being in the pits then, but they seem to be back on track. And here comes Lazzaro, as predicted, into the pit lane. Now, looks like Crozet is going to be the most likely to overtake Lazzaro now, and potentially Kusler as well. Lippi also in the pit lane, pairing from the incident there. And looks like Lippi is underway again. A short stop for Lippi. Good news. Lazzaro though, still a little bit to go before they're underway. At least their pit box is the first one though. Meanwhile, Haley Smith, 0.3 of a second behind Darling now. And looks to be making a move on the inside in the Bugatti. And Haley Smith is through, with Darling now 0.2 of a second behind as they go 3 wide almost down the start-finish straight. Haley Smith and Darling both overtaking Lazzaro there, who has yet to emerge from the pits, so Lazzaro came out a lot worse off than Lippi did. And Haley Smith actually opening up a pretty healthy 2-second gap now ahead of Darling. Again, kicking up dust and smoke as they come around that particular part of the track. Again, I can't see any performance impact, and maybe that's only me seeing that. Could just be a CSP issue, I guess. Peltonen still 30 seconds behind Nurmi at this point. As we go into lap 29, you can see that the track conditions are still 98% grip, 36 degrees track temperature, and that 12 km/h wind to the west is still persisting. Like the track textures there just seem to go into a dusty part. Maybe they've just allowed that dust for some reason to kick up when you're on the concrete still. Be just a track issue. There's the Amel car, driven by La. Definitely struggles for power. Here's the onboard view from the Amel car by Harula. But here we have Lazzaro, who is now on a comeback mission, overtaking Darling. They're back out and underway, and opening up a little bit of a gap themselves to Darling. They're going to be hunting down Haley Smith. They did lose, I suppose, from that incident 6 positions. I think they were on P5 before, weren't they? So Lippy and Henry are getting back into the action here as Henry takes the inside line through the first chicane and leads Lippy out by 0.4 of a second. Lippy, on the other hand, cuts on the inside, looking for a way to get back. But 0.4 of a second to go, still has a little bit of work to do here. As we go through lap 31, it remains a pretty close fought battle between Lippy and Henry. Darling, on the other hand, has just gone into the pits though, and that's allowed for now to get up to P12. Lazzaro is continuing the comeback streak from P11, but they're still 4.1 seconds behind Haley Smith. And from there onwards, it's a pretty big gap. Jolie Muir looking like they have a whole minute and 20 seconds or so. That's over 2/3 of a lap, separating themselves from Uotila at the moment. Meanwhile, our leader Nurmi looks unfazed and as calm as ever. 33-second gap now between themselves and Peltonen. Aitonen has done well to get up to P3, but they have a 22-second gap to cover. And then Uotila 10 seconds back from Aitonen again. Running down now to the first chicane, we've got Henry and the number 6 car, which is Bremgarten. They're not actually battling for position, but in there as well you can see what looks like Lefredge in the 314 car. Lefredge now 0.2 of a second behind Henry though, coming around the outside as they work their way past the Amel car. And Henry has a slight advantage, but seems to be switching over to Lefredge now, who now leads Henry into the second chicane. Now we've seen Henry do some pretty marvellous stuff on the brakes. Let's see what he's got in store for us today. Let's go on board for this actually with Henry. See, actually this time his braking isn't quite as good as Lefredge, and he's actually got a little bit of pressure there coming from Bremgarten, who narrowly avoids contact. Back in P10 we've got Lazaro and Haley Smith, who are just trading positions as Haley Smith drops down to P11. Lazaro back up to P10 now, so working their way back up from that disastrous incident earlier on. So Marcus Peltonen has come into the pits on the 34th lap, and that is in sharp contrast to Nurmi, who has stayed out and hasn't needed to come in just yet. I assume they're both driving on the same compound. I'll double check that. Yeah, so Nurmi and Peltonen are both on SH, and so is Heitinen and Uatilla. Interestingly, Lemure is on the LS compound. Okay, so it was just a splash and dash for Peltonen. He's back out already, and he's only dropped 2 positions in that time. So if Heitinen or Uatilla to come in, then that's definitely going to be a change of the top 4. Heitinen now basically driving in free air. They've got 11 seconds between themselves and Uatilla behind, and a whole minute and 40 seconds behind Nurmi. Nurmi might be coming in for a pit stop, we'll have to see. We've just gone past the start-finish line, I haven't gone through the pits, so they might be staying out for a bit longer. Or they've got a different strategy being employed to Peltonen, and they're trying to do a no-stop race. The soft compound tyre though does degrade the fastest, so could be that they need to change tyres at some point. So the best lap of the race is held by Nurmi. That's a 2:03.673, and for context, our last lap was a 2:04.161. So they're just driving incredibly consistently here with their lap times. For comparison, Peltonen put in a 2:04.545, and Heitinen put in a 2:04.903. With Uatilla on a 2:05.856. Nurmi just working their way past number 10 car, which is Withoft. Gets through without too much drama there as well. Looks like Uatilla has got something to be concerned about, because Peltonen's now coming back pretty strong. Sub 3 second gap now, despite the changeover in the pits, and looks like Peltonen's are man on a mission as that gap continues to fall. 2.6 seconds already, and they've just been going around the same corner. So definitely looks like Uatilla's going to have a bit of pressure from Peltonen very shortly. Peltonen desyncing though, as you can see there, and that might be a bit of a concern as they come into close quarters, because a desync like that could definitely cause an incident. So Nurmi still leading on lap 37, but the gap to Heitinen has shortened. It's now only a minute, and see actually that gap's falling pretty rapidly as Heitinen's making some good ground here. I wonder if Nurmi is starting to slow down to come into the pits, or potentially has some kind of other issue which is leading to them being a little bit slower. Because to lose 30 to 40 seconds in such a short period of time is certainly indicative of some kind of issue. You can see Heitinen now definitely closing very quickly. Sub 45 seconds about to arrive. Ah, okay. Might just been a timing issue because it's just jumped back up to 105. 105. Uatilla now only 1.5 seconds ahead of Peltonen, and they'll certainly be feeling the pressure here. Let's go on board with Peltonen. You can see from their point of view that the target is in sight. Only 1.5 seconds separating these two. timer for Heitinen versus Nurmi, going absolutely crazy at the moment. But here goes Peltonen, closing right in behind Uatila. That looked like it was Paul van Rosen parked on the outside edge there. And you can see that the speed that Peltonen is bringing to this race just can't be matched from Uatila's side. It's a matter of time now before the overtake begins. And I think we're seeing it right now. Even going around the outside, it's Peltonen with the advantage. And they're neck and neck as they come over the start-finish line, heading down towards the first chicane. But they've got traffic ahead. Looks like Ubermisky, or actually that could be, no, that's Darling with the pink and blue. Tiny bit of contact between Uatila and Pelton there, but nothing too much to be concerned about. And Uatila's now 0.5 of a second behind and losing ground rapidly. Back down in P15 we've got Henry, who's making a regular appearance on the stream today. He's managing to hold Pereira at bay with a 0.6 second gap, but Pereira seems to be on a bit of a mission here to catch up. And here comes the overtake. Pereira slingshotting down the inside track here. Setting up for the start-finish straight, and will it be Pereira leading into the first chicane? Looks like it will be. Henry's now 0.3 seconds behind. Severson also appearing there on the inside from Henry's point of view. Gives Henry something else to worry about. Coming back to P2, we've got Heitinen, who, a bit like Uatila, has now got Marcus Peltonen bearing down on them. Peltonen continues to put the pressure on, doing so in a careful, calculated way as to not cause any accident at this point. Only 10 laps left to go. Heitinen and Peltonen continue their battle. 0.4 of a second between these two now as Peltonen gets a little bit closer. And the Talbot, top speed, doesn't seem to be doing enough to hold Peltonen at bay at this moment in time. Here they come once more down the start-finish straight, running down to that first chicane. And this time Peltonen pushes down on the inside. You can see the brakes there much more on point than Heitinen's Talbot. That puts Peltonen back up into the P2 spots, with Heittinen dropping back now into P3, Uatila back into P4, Billy Muir in P5, and Lazaro unfortunately hasn't managed to work their way back up yet. Here comes Heittinen though. It's an opportunity to overtake Peltonen. I think Peltonen had to take a bit of action to avoid what looks like Henry, I think that is. Yes it is. As they come down, and oh, Talbot's had to take evasive action, almost hits the C6 Laboratoire, and narrowly avoids the ML car as well. So Heitzen had to really work to avoid that one. Thankfully, didn't hit anything. But have they had any accidents now on the back of that? I mean, that could be very dangerous for the tyres. Peltonen coming back through though. I think Talbot was just returning the position. Oh, sorry, Heittinen was returning the position in the Talbot. There's the animal car again. So a bit of excitement there for Heittinen. Heittinen now very close to Uatila, and Uatila now taking the opportunity to close in this gap on the back of that little mistake from Heittinen there. But again, Uatila just losing out a little bit there in the chicane. This is not the opportunity to get past Heittinen at this particular moment in time. And as we go through lap 42, it's Nurmi who I wonder if they are going to be needing to stop at all during this race, whether their strategy has been to do a no-stopper. Seem to be doing just fine at the moment. 2:04.856 in the last lap, which is a bit slower than we've seen them going before, but still very respectable time compared to the rest of the grid. Uatila though has overtaken Heittinen to claim P3, and Heittinen's going to have to work a little bit harder, I think, to get this back. Now Uatila dropping Heittinen by 5 seconds or so. I wonder if this is indicative of damage on Heittinen's part. There's Paul van Rosen, now 9 laps down. So Van Rosen's in the 1926 Bugatti, but he just seems to be struggling. He must have had damage from the very beginning of this race. And it's just tootling along at 60 kilometers an hour. Not entirely sure what's led to that. Here's Uratilla in P3 again. This time Heidton's got a little bit closer, 2 seconds. Ooh, but again, Heidton off track. Come through the chicane, so I wonder if they have picked up some damage as a result of one of those incidents and now is struggling with car control. We'll have to see whether they come in for a pit stop at all. There you go, Heittonen into the pits, as I suspected, to rectify some damage, although they don't seem to be getting into the pit box, or they're having to reverse in. So that's why it pays to do a little bit of practice getting into your pit box. Hopefully they don't lose out too much in terms of positions, because Clearly Muir is still over a minute behind. So Jelly Moore, E5 still, only 15 seconds behind Heitton now, who's back out on track. Yeah, so I wonder actually if Heitton has started to have his brakes fade and consequently has had an issue with those. There was Lazaro coming absolutely flying in. You can see just how much Heitton is having to brake early now. This will put him at risk of being overtaken by Jaley Moore, who's going to be undoubtedly able to gain time now into the braking zones. You can see in the background Lemure just arriving in a blaze of glory with lots of smoke coming off the wheels as they overcooked the braking zone a little bit there. But Heittonen is potentially going to struggle now. So just 5 laps left to go here at Miramar. And it looks like we've got a pretty solid chance of Nurmi winning this race at this point, given they've been so dominant for so long. I definitely suspect they won't be doing any pit stops at this stage in the race. Yeah, you can see Heitinen is really struggling on the brakes there, and here comes Jay Lemure. Is that going to be contact between Heitinen and the Bugatti? Looks like Mejda. It is. Here comes Jay Lemure, only 0.4 of a second behind, and actually blasts right through Heitinen on the inside there, so that wasn't even a contest. Heitinen's now got a 20-second gap between themselves and Ty Severston. Yeah, it definitely does seem to be a bit of a tough track on the brakes there, Tollenan. Certainly agree with you on that one. All of that high speed down to very slow speed cornering. Do we know what's happened to Paul van Rosen, given that they're in a 1926 Bugatti and they're struggling for speed? They've been lapped now almost 10 times. There's Renaud in the number 2 car, heading into the first chicane. Paul van Rosen in the background in the blue car. So Marcus Pelton in P2 has still got a 12-second gap between themselves and P3. So looking pretty solid here for a P2 finish. They've been in P2 pretty much the entirety of the race, apart from a small blip when they came in for a pit stop. But again, they've regained their positions quite quickly after that. There's the Anel car, the only one that I've seen in the race so far. Significantly underpowered. So Tollenan saying that Paul van Rosen's using third gear only, which might be indicative of a gearbox issue, which would make sense. Looks like Kayla Fredge in the 314 is currently running in P14. Pereira though, close behind, only 2.2 seconds behind, and with 3 laps left to go, might be a chance there for Pereira to grab P14. They played their cards right. Gap closing now to sub 2 seconds as they come into the braking zone. You can see the Fredge there cooking the brakes a little bit as they come into the corner. Oh, who have we got there? Turned around. That looks like Ty Severston. No, sorry, it's you, Attila. That's definitely slowed down Lafrege a little bit, and allowed Pereira now to get to 0.8 of a second behind. Part of the good thing about the racing of this nature is you have the traffic kind of effect, a little bit like modern multi-class endurance racing. But that does mean that it makes it a little bit more interesting with the overtaking. See here, Lafrege and Pereira both having to deal with the fact that they've got other cars around them which are driving at different speeds, and there's again that was Kai Siversen this time off track. So Uatila and Siversen definitely both struggling with a little bit of braking issues potentially. Go back to Lafrege and Pereira though. See what Pereira can do to close this gap. And here comes Pereira now, blasting down the inside. Looking for an opportunity, but decides to back out a little bit before the chicane. And there's Lafrege overcooking it into the braking zone, making it very easy for Pereira to blast on through. 2.5 seconds gap now between these two. And Lafrege getting the car sideways. Again, look, that's Uatila off onto the grass after the chicane. They must be having braking issues or something leading to this these issues into the chicanes. Let's stay with Uatila now to see how their next chicane goes. At 48 of 50, so not long to go now. The tyres might be quite worn out to this point. That's a good shout actually, because they do have the SH compound on, I believe. Yes, they do. Daily Mill though is on the other compound, so maybe they'll be faring a little bit better at this point. Here comes Uatila past Lafrege. Let's see how they go this time into the braking zone and through the chicane. Second chicane coming up. Yeah, definitely struggling on the compound there. Spins it again into the chicane. And I think Uatila will be looking forward to this race coming to an end, so that they can get off the ice skates that they're currently driving on. Here comes Haley Smith and Kusler, with Haley Smith looking for a little bit of an opportunity there. There's Medja as well. And Haley Smith doing well to keep up here. See if Haley's got anything in the tank. Try and grab P10 by the end of this race. into the chicane. And Haley's all over the back end of Kusler here. And gets a good exit from the corner. But Kusler was struggling a little bit for grip on the way out of the corner there. And Haley Smith was very much willing and obliging to take advantage of that. But at the moment, it's Haley who's struggling a little bit for straight line speed here. Has to tuck in back behind Kusler on the corner as they try and find their way through. On the last lap now, of course. And Kusler's once again behind Haley Smith as they come down to the first of the chicanes. Now 2 seconds behind though. And it's Nurmi rounding the last corner, heading for the start-finish straight. Bring this round to a close. Nurmi takes a very commanding win here at Miramar, with Peltonen coming up to a strong P2. But a whole minute's behind, so we're going to have to wait a little bit for that to happen. Meanwhile, we've got Lazaro and Withoft trading positions as they take P8 and 9 respectively. We're just watching Peltonen now as they head down through the final corner. Lazzaro's picked up P8, Withoft in P9, we've got Renard in P12, Darling in P15, Henry P16, La Rosen in 21 and 22 respectively. Here goes Marcus Peltonen to a solid P2 victory here. Well earned spot on the podium. And there we have it, and Uatilla is once again off the track. They must be really struggling on those tyres now. They are safe, however, because they've already managed to secure P3, despite the fact that Jay Lemure already catching at that point, but Jay Lemure's already crossed the line and secured P4. See if Kai Severston. Yep, Kai is suffering from a disaster at the moment. They are driving into the car park with a flat tyre, even though they haven't technically crossed the line. Are they trying to cross the line in the car park? That is the question. I think they are. They've got a flat tyre somehow and are just trying to cross the line any which way they can. And they're going to have to be careful here because they need to finish this race. Otherwise it's going to be a DNF. Uatilla grabbed third spot. Kai Severston continues to try and finish this race, but they're going to go under the grandstand, but they can't because it's actually solid, it seems. Yep, so the wheel glowing red hot now. They have to reverse. And they might have to go back the way they came. We need to make sure they don't burn this engine out. Yep. This is the only camera we can use because they're behind the grandstand. They must have crossed the line technically by this point, but they have not registered as having done so. I'm not entirely sure how they managed to get into this position in the first place. And they're at risk here of not finishing this race. There's a fence all the way as far as I can see, so I'm not entirely sure how they even got into this in the first place, but they're going to have to try and get themselves out of this. There's the finish line, but I suspect they might need to be a bit closer than they are, otherwise this isn't going to count. Well, it's 7th place technically for the time being, Tolnin, but unless they actually register as finishing the race, doesn't that count as a DNF? Okay, I think they're getting back to the entry gate where they might have come in through. Yeah, thankfully they look like they've got a way. Oh, actually no, do they? No, that's a ditch. Oh god. They're in a bit of a pickle now. Just when you thought this race wasn't going to get any longer. He's got a hill to go up now. We know how these cars deal with hills. So, yeah, return to the pits. Hopefully that doesn't ruin his race and the powers that be deem that was an acceptable finish. But yeah, that would be a very, very upsetting result for Kai Sivertsen if that doesn't result in a P7 finish. Anyway, let's go ahead and open up the interview section if anyone's still around. Okay, well that's good, at least that was a DNF. There I have it. The final results now confirmed. Kai Sivertsen has secured P7. And next week we're off to the Nürburgring. Be very exciting indeed. Anyway, I think that will probably be it for the stream today. I think we normally sometimes have interviews, but I see everyone's logged off already, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the stream. Thank you all very much for being part of the stream today. As ever, I've been Pirate Laserbeam doing the commentary here at CVR for the 1923 Golden Era Championship, and always a pleasure to be here commentating on the fine racing that we have here in the 1923 cars. But looking forward to seeing you all for the next round, and we'll see how things play out that time. But without further ado, have a very